First in focus, the announcement that Singapore will repeal 377A of the Penal Code, which criminalises sex between men. At the same time, the government says it will continue to uphold and safeguard the institution of marriage, recognising only unions between a man and a woman. By repealing the law, it is seeking what it calls political accommodation to balance different views among Singaporeans. Tan Se-hui has more.
Section 377A dates back 84 years when it was introduced by the British. The law makes it a crime for a man, whether in public or in private, to commit any act of gross indecency with another man, and it carries a jail term of up to 2 years. This reflected social norms back then, but attitudes have shifted over the decades. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says homosexuality is now better understood. There have been several court challenges to 377A seeking to declare the law unconstitutional. None have been successful. In arguments before the High Court in January 2020, 3 men contended it should be struck down. Their argument, it violates Article 12 of the Constitution, which guarantees equality before the law. Their challenges were dismissed, and their appeals this February were also unsuccessful. The Court of Appeal rules Section 377A is unenforceable. Since then, there has been a growing sense that something needs to give.
For these reasons, the government will repeal Section 377A and decriminalise sex between men. I believe this is the right thing to do and something that most Singaporeans will now accept. This will bring the law into line with current social mores and I hope provide some relief to gay Singaporeans.
But he adds that most Singaporeans do not want the repeal to trigger sweeping changes, like in education, for example. There's also the uncertainty of what the repeal may entail, possibly divisive activism on all sides. As it navigates a controlled and carefully considered approach, the government is clear there will be no change to existing definitions of family in this society.
Under the law, only marriages between one man and one woman are recognized in Singapore. Many national policies rely upon this definition of marriage, including public housing, education, adoption rules, advertising standards, film classification. The government has no intention of changing the definition of marriage, nor these policies. We will therefore protect the definition of marriage from being challenged constitutionally in the courts. The legal definition is contained in the Interpretation Act and the Women's Charter. We have to amend the Constitution to protect it, and we will do so.
The Prime Minister believes this balances what Singaporeans will accept and what most of them want, which is to retain the basic family structure of marriage between a man and a woman.
What we seek is a political accommodation, one that balances different legitimate views and aspirations among Singaporeans. For some, this will be too modest a step. For others, it will be a step taken only with great reluctance, even regret. But in a society where diverse groups have strongly held opposing views, everyone has to accept that no group can have things all their way. If one side pushes too hard, the other side will push back even harder. And in some Western societies, not few, this has resulted in culture wars, contempt for opposing views, and not just for the views, but for the opposing people. Cancel culture to browbeat and shut up opponents, and bitter feuds splitting society into warring tribes. There are some signs of similar things starting to happen here too. I say, let us not go in this direction. All groups should exercise restraint because that's the only way we can move forward as one nation together.
Political accommodation, Mr. Lee hopes, will help Singapore remain a tolerant and inclusive society. A full debate on the issue will take place in Parliament.